Bonjour, hi. Welcome back to another episode of CanadaOne. Today we've got a lot of big news to go over, mainly the more Boeing news. As you might know, for the previous several episodes, we've spoken about all the Boeing things that have been going on. The one where they, murder a bunch of whistleblowers, and then they commit fraud, and they do normal big business stuff with the U.S. government because big businesses do no wrong. Anyways, Boeing's finally getting charged. This is absolutely crazy. The news came out, I believe, today or yesterday. But Boeing is pleading guilty on account of conspiracy to defraud regulators, especially the FAA, regarding I believe it was the flight control systems within this two 737 planes that ended up crashing in 2020. What happened was their flight systems, they malfunctioned, and then when the investigators did an investigation, Boeing kind of lied to them. They said, yeah, it's all good, it's been fine, it's probably fine. Now it's coming out that it was either, look, dog, this is what the DOJ said to them. They go, look, you plead guilty, or we're taking you to court, and we're getting you on felony charges, conspiracy to defraud the U.S. government, conspiracy to defraud, American regulatory agencies. Anyways, so what is Boeing having to do or pay for, killing, I believe it was over 300 people. 300 people. $243 million in fines. You want to know how much the families were asking for? This seems excessive, to be honest. $24.8 billion. Seems a little excessive, guys. Come on. Who do you think you're dealing with? Boeing. It's not like they're a huge, multinational corporation that gets billions and billions of dollars in federal grants and is also one of two plane makers in a duopoly industry with extremely high margins. No. You got it all wrong. This is a small mom and pop company. They're just trying to get by. COVID really hurt their books. They've got a lot of debt. They can't afford the $24.8 billion to pay off your families because they murdered all your family members. Oops. And not only once, they did it twice. They crashed two planes with their 737 MAXs. And by the way, those planes are now still flying, by the way, after the 4 months that they weren't, or I think it was 9 months where they were all grounded. They're back. We're so back. Boeing is so back. And now, what happens with this, this guilty plea is that most people are just going to stop looking at Boeing now. Now that if they kill, nobody's going to investigate the whistleblower thing. Nobody, I think, even if they kill more whistleblowers, I don't think anyone gives a shit anymore because they're like, we got them. We don't have to do more. Because this is as far as the government goes. It's like with the Purdue Pharma thing. Purdue Pharma obviously was the company that started the opioid epidemic, selling OxyContin and marketing it, essentially defrauding the government, defrauding the American population, and, the world population as a whole because, anyways, they made billions and billions and billions of dollars off of this drug, and then once they were fined, it was the biggest pharmaceutical fine in history, and yet they still, even after the fines, they still profited off the drugs. And then what they did was they just, declared bankruptcy. They kept all the money. They shipped off all the money into, trust funds and stuff. They declared bankruptcy, and they barely had to pay anything. And now, we have an opioid epidemic that's raging, absolutely destroying communities all across the world, mostly in America, a lot in Canada too. And it's one of the main reasons why fentanyl is so, readily available, was because of Purdue Pharma. And this is essentially the same thing, maybe to a lesser extent, but obviously 300 people died, okay? Obviously the families want some compensation. So instead of, a couple 24.8 billion, they're going to be getting 243 million in fines. But there's also a few other caveats. Boeing's going to have to spend $455 million in order to improve compliance and safety programs over the next 3 years. So that's good, I guess. They also... Oh, by the way, with this guilty plea, they're still allowed to get government contracts. Because if they would have been charged with a felony, it would seem unlikely that they'd still be getting contracts from the federal government. But now with this plea, they're like, we still trust you. Big dog, we still trust you. This is why I personally support the military-industrial complex. There's been a lot of hate for a lot of these companies recently, and I don't get it. It's not like Lockheed Martin or Raytheon would be profiting off wars and then, essentially pushing the governments in order to be more neoconservative, for example, where they want to have massive foreign policy that involves big wars and lots of payments for weapons. Ukraine, Israel. But no, they wouldn't ever do that. So at least Boeing still gets the government contracts, because they would have lost nearly 40% of their business, which would have been a shame, because Boeing is such a integral part of American culture and American. Because we here at CanadaOne, we support big businesses. They're also getting a compliance officer to oversee all the new safety and compliance programs over the 3 years, and they're basically on probation for the next 3 years. Slap on the wrist, bitch. Anyway, so that's essentially what's going on with Boeing. They also just recently announced that they were reacquiring, I believe it was Spirit Aerosystem, which they spun off a few years ago, and it's essentially the supply manufacturer, the supplier for all the planes, and they spun off that company. And then there was a lot of issues with the company. This is what a lot of the whistleblowers saying, was that there wasn't a lot of quality control, and that this company was just, sending over shitty parts to Boeing because they didn't want to spend the money to fix all of this. So now Boeing kind of sees it as like a PR move. They're like, all right, I guess we have to buy it. I wouldn't be surprised if that was like a secret term for the deal. But they announced this a little while ago, maybe a few weeks ago, that they're rebuying it. Anyways, there's been a lot of Boeing hate, and I don't get it. I don't support the Boeing hate. We stand with Ukraine, we stand with Israel, and we stand with Boeing and Philip Morris. All right? And I don't want to hear any of you libtards to tell me that you don't like big businesses, because I know who's funding you. I know who's funding Joe Biden. Well, nobody anymore after that debate. Okay, that's why Trump is now the mainstream guy, but you know what? And here we support Joe Biden because he's so young. Anyways, the second big story is the elections in France. After the European parliamentary elections, where the Marine Le Pen's national rally, the right-wing party, the far-right extremist party. Okay, buddy. If someone says something's far right, that seems pretty moderate to me. I don't know. If someone calls someone a racist, I support them now. That's a joke. Okay, people. All right. It's to prove a point. Okay, it was just a point to get across. Anyways, so after the European parliamentary elections, Macron noticed that, his party didn't do too well. And that what does he do? He called a snap election in order to see, is there still support for my party? And if there isn't, then, I'll move on. And what happened? So in the first round of the French elections, the National Rally outperformed and came in first, right? But the problem is no party reached a majority. And what happens in the French system, in the parliamentary system in France, is that if there's no majority, they go to a second round of voting. And in that second round, they take the top two candidates plus any other candidate that got over 12.5% of the votes. And then they do another election. And then until somebody gets a majority, right? So overall, in the first round, Marine Le Pen's National Rally got 33% of the vote. The NFP, which is essentially a super left-wing socialist party, it's the NDP basically, they got 28% of the vote, and Macron got 20% of the vote, which was, not great, because last election he did a little bit better than that. Anyways, this was the first round, but because the vote was so evenly split, For the second round, this was completely unprecedented, where there were 800 different constituencies, which then went to the second round with three candidates, and there were even some with 4 candidates. That's how evenly split it was. It's called a triangle, I think, something like that. I don't know, some stupid French shit. Here we're Canadian. And by the way, the Quebecers are the real French, okay? They speak the real French. The culture is real French. Parisian French are fake. And now they're all Muslim and black. So for the second round, they're going in. And yeah, there's these 800 triangulaires where you got the three parties, mostly being the National Rally, the NFP, and then the Macron's party. So what happens is that the two left-leaning parties look at the election. They're like, well, we're going to split the vote, essentially. What's going to happen is that people are going to be split between us, and the National Rally is going to win. So they're like, we can't let that happen. So what they do is they essentially colluded, where they're saying, well, look, who's the more popular candidate? Okay, we'll give it to you, and I'll drop out of the race. So let's say you have the 3 candidates, right? Get rid of Marine Le Pen for a second. So you got the 2 left-leaning candidates. Whoever came in third in the first round basically said, all right, I'm dropping out so that all my supporters goes to the other left-wing party and doesn't split the vote and let Marine Le Pen win. And that's what happened. Macron and the NFP, they essentially colluded. And what they did was they got rid of the split vote. They dropped hundreds of candidates, also that, they would be able to be pushed up in the polls and it would block Marine Le Pen because they're so scared of far-right nationalism because that's such a bad thing. And guess what? It worked. It worked. They did it well. Shout out to them. It worked, I guess. But it didn't work too well because no party did get a majority. There was no party that got the, I believe, 289 out of 577 seats that were required to get a majority in the French government. So what were the final results after the second round? The NFP got 188 seats, Macron got 161 seats, and the National Rally got 142 seats. For context, the National Rally in 2022 got 19% of the vote in the second round of the election. This year, 2 years later, they're up to 24.6% of the vote. So they've been growing momentum. They've been growing, their popularity. But what was really striking about this election is that the voter turnout was incredibly high. 66.7%, in fact, which, to us is like, well, that's normal, right? But that's like the highest level since like the 1980s for France, okay? Voter participation has been on a steady decline for years in France. Nobody wants to vote. These French people, all they want to do is protests. But this is a massive 20% jump in voter participation since the last election. So it's a massive jump. And the National Rally actually, they got, in terms of numbers, they've done the best they've ever done. Not only on percentage-wise, but just in terms of actual number of votes. They blew out all the past performances. So the National Rally is doing pretty well. And, in fact, because no party was able to secure a majority, Macron, in order to stay in power, is going to have to partner up, make a coalition government with the super left-wing NFP. Which I don't understand. But it's very interesting because you think all these problems that we're having in Canada or the problems they're having in America, where it's like, well, these left-wing governments are just retarded. No, this is happening everywhere, which is so interesting. It's all happening at the same time. There's so many things that are happening at the same time. It seems odd. It's just odd. But anyways, so they actually did pretty well, I think. Would I have liked them to win? Obviously, was there a little bit of collusion? Yeah, a little bit. But it's okay. It's okay. Because I think Marine Le Pen's going to be here for a while. And I think the next election, if things get worse, and now if things get worse, they can really blame the left wing's people. And they're all going to be, pushed to the right because now it's like, well, y'all voted for not only the centrist leftard, you voted for the left-wing leftard too. So now, and they're teaming up together. So now you're seeing centrism not working. Well, left-wing centrism not working. You're seeing And then what's probably gonna happen is you're gonna see super left wing not working. So you'll be pushed to one other option, and that's Marine Le Pen's National Rally, who actually just today, I believe, joined Viktor Orban's, I think, Patriot Front, whatever it's called, the new, like, I don't even know what it is. I think it's like a UN or NATO type thing, where you have all these right-wing governments, or it's like the Patriot Coalition or something. All these right-wing, political parties and these political movements are joining together with Viktor Orban to push, a single unified message, mostly being anti-immigration. That's basically it, because the immigration crisis, it's happening all over the white world, the Western world. I don't want to say white world because it's also happening in, Asian countries, especially Japan, where they're starting to see a slight increase in immigration, and it's causing issues already, but I don't want to get into that. Anyways, so that was the French election. Don't really care that much, but it's good to see that these right-wing politicians are improving. They're doing better than expected, though a lot of people were kind of disappointed for the second round. But I mean, it makes sense. They coalesced, they cheated. It's okay. It's okay, and this is why, bringing back to Canada, I think why Justin Trudeau is quite confident that he'll be able to keep the vote, because I think when they're going to go to election, I think he's going to try and get the NDP and the Green Party all to coalesce behind the Liberal Party to prop them up, because what they're fundamentally all scared about is the big bad Conservatives, even though the Conservatives are just a bunch of conservatards who are barely right-wing. That's why People's Party is the only party. They're the Canada First Party. Coming back to Canada, let's talk about the refugees. I guess it gets tiring to talk about migration and all these migrants, but it just, these stories keep piling on. It doesn't end. It just keeps going. And, I'm going to keep talking about it till the government starts deciding, starts waking up to the fact that our country is being ruined. I'm going to keep talking about. I'm going to keep fighting the good fight. So, what are we talking about today? Well, new report came out about the hotel costs for refugees. All right? This is one hotel in Niagara, I believe, and then 10 hotels in Montreal. Something around there. So, let's say 15 hotels. The average, and these were hotels which were paid for by the government, which were essentially bought out or rented out by the government to pay for refugees and illegals. The average stay at these hotels was 113 days. Okay? 113 days. On average, these people were given $208 per person per day. So that comes out to around $115 million for the year, which is on the very low end of the estimates, because they didn't even start tracking the numbers for most of 2023. For a large, or at least a portion of 2023, they weren't even tracking all the costs. $115 million for refugees and illegals. And now, let's keep going, okay? Let's keep going. The total for 2023... they passed a bill in the government giving them $769 million for illegals and refugees. To house them, to feed them, to whatever. To give them free iPhone 16s, and VR headsets. Apparently, all these migrants are getting Apple Vision Pros, okay? They come here from Africa and they're illiterate and they shit on beaches, they shit on beaches. And then they just get free food, free Wi-Fi, as we have starving veterans who are living under bridges and nobody wants to help them. We've got a homeless crisis, and yet we're bringing in millions of these people. Look, do I feel bad? Have a lot of these these migrants been lied to? Yeah. But it's the government's fault, and it's the people who keep voting for these governments. We have literal homeless veterans. We have homeless people. We've got a drug epidemic. We've got a homeless epidemic. We've got a housing shortage. We've got a healthcare shortage. We're in shortage of everything. Inflation is raging high. And yet the government is so hell-bent on bringing in millions of people under the name of I don't know what, because that's the only thing that's propping up the economy. Bringing in a bunch of cheap labor is the only thing keeping the Canadian economy salient. The economy's doing abysmal. You're looking at unemployment levels. Unemployment's rising. We're up to 6.1% unemployment. We were expecting, tens of thousands of jobs to be created last month. How many were created? No, we lost 1,000 jobs. The economy's going to shit, and we're pretending like it's not happening, even though, our deficits are at sky high, all-time highs. Our trade deficits are at all-time highs. Our debt is at all-time highs. Our interest payments on the debt are at all-time highs. Inflation's not coming down. We've got a homeless crisis, and we're sending money to Ukraine, and we're bringing in millions of people. And again, that $769 million bill for illegals and refugees is again, what I would say is the low end, because there's definitely other things that have been emarcated for different, spending purposes. And that's also just direct payments, right? It doesn't include the cost of healthcare, doesn't include the cost of, let's say, dental care or whatever, all these other things, which is probably pushing that number up in the billions just for 2023. Again, just for 2023 alone. And now this came out, I think, yesterday. The city of Ottawa wants to spend $11 million to buy a nunnery to house 150 migrants. Again, city of Ottawa, I've been there. There are homeless people, okay? There are drug addicts on the street. And you want to spend $11 million to house 150 migrants. Okay? Do the math. Does that seem very good? Does that seem Canada first? Does it seem like the government actually cares about you? Because it doesn't to me. So this is the big issue, and it's not a race thing. It's never been a race thing. Everyone in the comments are like, racist and shit. It's never been about, we shouldn't let him in because he's black. We shouldn't let him in because he's brown. We should let in all the whites. No, it's not that. I want no immigration. I don't want any European immigrants. I don't want any African immigrants or Indian immigrants. I want none, or Chinese immigrants. I want none, because we can't handle it, and that's the issue. We cannot support the levels. We cannot handle these people. The culture is getting decimated. The economy is getting decimated. The only people who are benefiting are big businesses, and that ultimately, because big businesses are behind the liberal governments and also behind the conservative governments. Pierre Poilievre's getting millions of dollars from lobbyists. Justin Trudeau is too. And big businesses love the cheap labor that these refugees, asylum seekers, and illegals are bringing in. 2.2 million people entered this country last year. And nobody thinks that's an issue. Nobody cares. And the media won't tell you anything because that's racist to point that out. You're just a xenophobe. Again, we have 500,000 illegals in this country, right? We've got millions of people coming in. We've got big businesses gouging out our cities, taking our money, pumping them to the United States. Where are the Canadian corporations that are not banks or oil companies? There's not many. Yeah, the top 100 largest Canadian companies are mining, oil, banks, and like IGA. Okay, these companies are not. We don't even have a real economy. Okay, all of the companies are fake. All of the big businesses are in like these oligopolies. Canada has like one of the biggest monopoly issues. We have 2 airlines. We've got 5 banks. We've got 3 grocery stores. And you have American corporations everywhere else. We have no automotive sector. What's the biggest automotive company in Canada? It's Lion Electric, who are making EV trucks, losing millions of dollars and getting millions in grants. And I support them. I wish we could do it. But I wish we could have an industry that doesn't need massive government support. How is Bombardier losing money? How are they keep getting bailouts from the government? They're too big to fail. No, we don't have any companies to fail, It's so many issues that the thing that's exacerbating all these issues is mass migration. It is a multiplying effect. You thought you had cracks in the healthcare system. And what I don't understand, I truly don't understand, that people aren't connecting the two things. How can you tell me that, oh, housing demand is so strong right now? Is it? I don't know why. Why are there so many people trying to buy houses? Oh, 2.2 million people enter the country. Yeah, maybe that'll push up prices. It's not a supply issue. To a certain extent, yes, maybe. Yeah, we're building 250,000 houses a year. But even with all of the billions of dollars the government, the Fed is spending, the federal government, I don't want to say Fed because, we don't have the Federal Reserve, that the liberals are spending, housing starts are going to be down next year. They're building less houses even though they're spending billions of dollars. And Pierre Poilievre's plan will infringe on provincial and municipal rights by forcing them to build housing when they don't really need it. There's a much easier way. And again, even if we build 1 million houses, it'll still take 5 years for all these things to come online. And then by that time, we'd have brought in another 10 million immigrants. So it's a direct, correlation is not cause. No, it's a direct link. They just did a study. Every 1% increase in immigration leads to a 1% increase in rental prices. They did the study. It's the most glaringly obvious thing in existence. And this is why, this is the biggest issue. And the fact that, Pierre Poilievre, who's supposedly this, this monumental figure who's going to, punch through the Liberal Party and, bring giant changes and reform to make Canada great again. And he's talked about immigration once. And in fact, the other times he's spoken about immigration, he said he wants to increase it. He's just like Justin Trudeau. They both want to send more money to Ukraine. They both want to keep spending, at least we can axe the tax, please. What about keeping Canada Canadian maybe? And not turning it into a third world nation? I'll have one tax cut, please. Let's bring in 25 more million immigrants, It's nonsensical. We need radical change because we're on a collision course. Why is Canada having the highest population growth out of any G7 nation, even though our productivity is off a cliff, our wages are down, our economy as a whole is down? We're seeing some of the worst economic growth we've ever seen. Why? Because our economy is fake. We have a fake economy run by big multinational American corporations. We need to bring back small businesses. I looked at a study. In the 1920s, 80% of people, either worked or had a small business. They were either self-employed or they were part of the community. Now it's like, what? Nobody's self-employed. Everyone's working for McDonald's. Obviously, that's an exaggeration, but you see my point. It used to be the things that we're seeing today we think are so set in stone, even though you look back 50 years, it's completely different. It's a completely different time. We've just become so adapted to this period. Oh, yeah, paying $5 for a bag of chips, that's normal. Yeah, oh my God, a deal. This bag of Doritos is only $4.99. We used to spend $1 for a bag of chips. It used to be cheap. I remember 5 years ago going to a Walmart, which I don't anymore because now I only support big Canadian businesses instead of big American businesses. But when I went to Walmart, it was you could get a liter of Pepsi or whatever for $1. For $1, you could get a liter. Now I believe it's $2.60 now. This is in 5 years. Our economy's crumbling. The dollar's crumbling. People can't afford anything. People literally cannot afford anything. The inflation numbers, they're lying to you. That's it. That's the hard truth. They're lying to you about the inflation numbers. They say, well, it's only 6%. Yeah, it's been 6% for 3 years. That compounds a little bit. You look at it on a nominal basis, our prices are up 50, 60% in a lot of cases. And yet wages are up, 20% maybe? And, those wages would be a lot higher. And now I think they came out with some economist or whatever, some economical paper came out, was like, well, if we deport all the illegals and we get rid of the immigrants, that'll push wages up, which will increase inflation. No, because if you get rid of them, that also decreases demand. So it'd be you'd have higher wages and stabilized prices, if not decreasing prices. Where does that inflation come from? Maybe some of these big corporations can shave off a couple of their billion. I'm going to sound like a leftard right now, but, it's so funny. The horseshoe theory is so right. They're so right fundamentally. It's like, you go so far right that you're like, well, maybe we should have small businesses and maybe we should have people who are independent and working for themselves and, having a community coalesce around these small shops versus like, and that sounds like a very left-wing proposition. It's like, well, maybe some of the big businesses should pay people more. This is what Henry Ford literally proved. Henry Ford literally proved that you could pay people high wages. You could cut their working hours, give them the weekend. Henry Ford invented the 5-day work week. He paid his employees extremely well. And what has he done? He built the most popular car at the time. He literally built the entire industrial sector for the automotive industry. Without Henry Ford's Model T, the whole industry might have been delayed 10 years, right? His Model T was so innovative and it got cheaper over time, even though he was paying his employees more and more and more, So it's like we have evidence where you can pay people more and you can bring prices down. And you can still be the wealthiest person on the planet at the time. Your company can still generate billions and billions of dollars by paying your people well. Because, you pay people well, they have more money, they go out and spend. And then, that generates, that helps the economy. Because what's the point of creating something that your employees can't even afford? Imagine you're working at McDonald's and you wouldn't be able to afford the food at McDonald's. That, it seems like an issue. And again, it's because these shareholders are all, That's why the Dodge brothers, they literally sued Henry Ford in the early days of the Ford Motor Company. Henry Ford wanted to use the profits generated to reinvest in the, give his people higher wages, higher salary, better conditions, reinvest in the business. And the Dodge brothers, which were a major investor in Henry Ford at the time, they sued him and they won, saying that a corporation's only job is to provide shareholder value. The Dodge brothers, which, Henry Ford had a slight aversion to a certain type of people. Google it. And he was right about that, by the way. Anyways. And this kind of ties into the final story of today, where it's the CBC comes out with a report. Students are having a hard time finding summer jobs. Yeah. I know. We know. I wonder why that must be. Oh, yeah, it's because these high schoolers don't have lots of experience because all these minimum wage jobs require so much experience. Yeah, that's why. It's because all these Gen Zers are so lazy. All they want to do is be on TikTok and vape. Yeah, that's why. All right, boomer, let me tell you fucking something, okay? It's because you've got 1 billion immigrants working these jobs. Fast food retail jobs used to be for college students, for high school students. As, they'd be there 2-3 years as they got their education, and this would give them the basis so that when they go to get a real job in their career, they have education plus work experience, and that gives them, a sense of the real world, gives them money, lets the economy stimulate a little bit. And then once they go to real jobs, it's a lot easier because they have experience in both education plus work experience. But now you've got 50-year-old people coming from like Bangladesh working at Tim Hortons or working at McDonald's or working at Wendy's or working at any of these companies that are just going to be staying there. And these people aren't going to ask for higher wages. And if you tell me, okay, that, well, they wouldn't pay higher wages anyways. There's a labor shortage, right? There's only a labor shortage because you're not paying people enough. And don't tell me that these minimum wage companies can't pay more, because they 100% can. I know anecdotal evidence, okay? This is just from my experience, of a coworker who works at, Tim Hortons, okay, who gets not only way higher than minimum wage, several dollars higher than minimum wage to work at, Tim Hortons, by the way. They get dental care, eye care, chiropractors, or whatever. I don't remember what it's, masseuse care, whatever. All included, plus paid vacation, plus all these things. So don't tell me that these billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar companies can't pay their employees right. They can give benefits, they can do all these things. They just don't want to, and they know they can get away with not doing that because they're being flooded with these cheap labor people. These people, cheap labor. No, they're not going to complain. Maybe they're in dangerous work situation. They're not going to complain because making what's minimum wage now? $15.75 an hour or $15.50 an hour is much better than the $3 a day they'd be making back where they came from. That's why big businesses love it. The report saying that between 15 and 24-year-olds, the people who normally work these minimum wage jobs, they're having the hardest time. Their group, their cohort, has a 12.8% unemployment rate, which is more than double the overall unemployment rate of 6.1%, which, by the way, is quite high. Okay, in America, it's more like, 3-4%. I believe. I have no idea, but... And now that's the excuse they're going. They're going, well, a lot of these companies are now asking for years of experience. I highly doubt that. And here, the audacity of these people. They don't talk anything about the cheap labor pool that's being introduced. They're not talking about the massive population growth because of immigration. They're not talking about any of this. They're not talking about the illegals or the foreign temporaries or the student visa holder. They're not talking about any of this. You know what they said? This is their advice. Okay, kids, here's their advice. Let me school you straight from the CBC to your ears. Well, because, don't be lazy is what they're saying. Look, if there are a lot of rejections, just keep going. Give out 50 to 100 applications so you can get 3 callbacks and then get no job. You just got to grind harder. Give out 100 applications. That's literally their first piece of advice. Their second one is start networking. Start finding people and having the real conversations and networking to get a minimum wage job. These people are out of their mind. Defund the goddamn CBC. Defund immigration. I want zero. It's outrageous. Kids cannot get jobs. If young people can't get jobs through their education, not only are they going to have less money so that they can't invest in buying a house, they won't have any money saved up. They also won't have any work experience. So once they get out of college, they're going to have a lot of problems finding these higher level up career jobs. And then they'll be forced to go to minimum wage anyways because now they have a degree, right? So now they're underemployed. Their wages are severely lowered and severely restricted. Then you add on to the fact that inflation's raging high. They can't afford housing, so they're renting. They have no more savings. Most Canadians can't afford a $500, unexpected payment. So now they have no money. And now they're renting and they can't build savings. So, decades are going to go by before they're even going to have the possibility of maybe putting a down payment on a house. If the situation gets better, which it won't because even the conservatives won't lower immigration, And then you keep looking. Let's say they start, they find a partner, a girlfriend, whatever, boyfriend, whatever, right? These people are not going to have children because they know, look, we can't raise a kid while we're renting, right? We should save our money, get a house. So now they're 35, maybe putting down a down payment for their first house, and then they have one kid, maybe, because the window of fertility's massively dropped. The woman's mid-career. She doesn't want to give up her career. They can't afford to have a stay-at-home mom, because the house, most of their income is going to go to the mortgage anyways. So it's just this compounding issue that keeps getting worse. And again, I'm going to keep harping on it. It comes down to one singular issue. One issue. It's not government policy. It's not because the taxes are too high. Obviously, we all know all these things are true. It's not because they're not investing enough. No. It's because of mass migration. That's it. Because of mass migration. Anyways, as usual, thank you all for listening. I believe the next episode, or the next few episodes, I'll be in a cottage somewhere. We'll be doing some White Boy Summer episodes. I'm hoping to get a few when I'm up there near Saint-Sauveur, for those of you who are in the know. We'll be doing some episodes. Very excited. And then, in August, I'm hoping to get a little documentary going for the People's Party Conference in Gatineau when I'm there. Anyways, as usual, thank you for listening, and stay Canada One.